This is Britney Spears wishing you a happy Pepsi Blue Christmas.
When most people first heard about Pepsi Blue, their reaction, if they had one at all, was to assume it was a dopey marketing gimmick that would prove to be short-lived. Yet, 20-odd years later, Pepsi Blue is still going strong. Well, maybe not strong, but it is still going. And if you're wondering how you missed it, stick around, because today we're going to take a look at how Pepsi Blue never actually went away. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other weird soft drinks you would like to hear about. Okay, time to take a closer look at the soft drink that blew us all away. In May of 2002, the Coca-Cola Company launched a new variation on its flagship product called Vanilla Coke. The company was still wiping egg off its face after the whole new Coke debacle of the 80s. But the new soda was long in the works, and its development was no secret to Coke's biggest competitor, Pepsi. That being the case, Pepsi started working to develop a competing product, which it sneakily aimed to have on the shelves one single day before Coke released its new product. And that new Pepsi flavor turned out to be Pepsi Blue. It's not entirely clear why Pepsi thought Pepsi Blue would act as a competitor to Vanilla Coke. The latter drink already had a long history dating back to the 1940s, when soda jerks would make their own versions by mixing vanilla flavoring in with the Coke syrup. You'd think Pepsi would have just released a vanilla-flavored variant of its own flagship soda, but instead they went with a hyper-sweet, super syrupy, berry-flavored formula that most people thought looked like Windex. It was an especially weird choice given that only a few years earlier, Pepsi had totally screwed the pooch with the release of Crystal Pepsi, another cola variant that relied on a weird coloring gimmick. After that highly public disaster, you'd think the company would stay away from coloring gimmicks like its livelihood depended on it. But it turns out, not so much. In all fairness, the reason Pepsi went that way again seems to be due to the phenomenal success of Mountain Dew Code Red. Mountain Dew, in case you didn't know, is owned by Pepsi. And in 2001, they introduced the cherry-flavored Code Red, which was the first time the brand ever introduced a flavor variant, other than the original. The bright red cola, which was possibly designed to mimic the day-glow tones of Gatorade, was originally set to be called Wild Cherry Mountain Dew. But the odds being what they were, the name was changed after failing to test well with urban and ethnic focus groups. Those groups apparently liked the sound of Code Red, though, and the drink became a huge success. So huge that just a year after its release, it was already one of the top 3 selling soft drinks in convenience stores. So when Pepsi went looking for a name for their new berry-flavored cola, they wanted something that would touch the same nerve. And a bright blue cola named Pepsi Blue seemed to fit the bill, or so they thought. According to the marketing blitz that accompanied its release, Pepsi Blue is a berry cola fusion. They never quite said which berries were being fused with cola, but most consumers seem to think it tasted like blueberries and/or raspberries. Some, however, felt it more closely resembled the taste of cotton candy, with a berry-like aftertaste, which is probably because Pepsi Blue is way sweeter than normal cola, even Pepsi, which is generally perceived as being sweeter than Coke to begin with. Pepsi, for the record, had started experimenting with such unusual flavors about a decade earlier. In 1991, for example, the company briefly released what it called the Pepsi Wild Bunch line, which included flavors like Raging Raspberry, Strawberry Burst, and Tropical Chill. The idea was to test market them and see how the public responded. But since none of them ever went national, we'll hazard a guess that the response wasn't quite what the company hoped. But they weren't about to give up either. 1996 saw the brief test release of the coffee-flavored Pepsi Kona, and 1996 saw the test release of the sugary Pepsi Candy, but neither of those seemed to hit with the general public either. The company registered its first alternative flavor win in 2000 with the release of Pepsi Twist, which was basically just regular Pepsi, but with a little lemon flavoring thrown in. It wasn't exactly revolutionary, but it did well enough to stay on the market until 2006. And the company would keep at it even after the release of Pepsi Blue. In 2003, they outright carbon copied Coke's idea and released Pepsi Vanilla. And in 2004, they released Pepsi Lime. Neither were the kind of extreme product that Pepsi Blue was supposed to be. But it didn't matter. Neither of them lasted more than 2 years before being discontinued. Anyway, the flavor of Pepsi Blue was apparently the end result of 9 months of taste testing, during which over 100 potential variations were tried out. The goal was to find a taste profile that would appeal to kids. who were apparently bored by the taste of normal colas. To that end, actual, factual teenagers were included in the development process, and the results pretty much speak for themselves. Of course, sodas don't literally speak for themselves. So when it came to marketing the new brand, Pepsi pulled out all the stops. For starters, they produced a series of commercials starring Britney Spears, who was arguably the world's biggest pop star at the time. They also went hog wild with product placements in the movies. And that's why Pepsi Blue turns up in films like Garfield the Movie and The Italian Job. They even started sponsoring sporting events like X Games and India's 2003 Cricket Cup, and secured endorsements from the New York Mets, as well as New England Patriots field goal kicker Adam Vinatieri. Now, all that was pretty par for the course when it came to marketing in the early aughts. But what wasn't was the internet. Back in those days, there wasn't anything quite like the online influencer marketing of today. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube didn't exist yet, and the word influencer, despite dating all the way back to the 14th century, was so uncommon it wouldn't even be added to the dictionary until 2019. But that wasn't going to stop Pepsi. To promote Pepsi Blue, they hired a whole team to create fake profiles for the online platforms that did exist at the time, and then use those fake profiles to rave about how awesome Pepsi Blue was. It was a great idea, except for one problem. The posts were so badly written that everyone saw them for what they were. The campaign backfired egregiously, and rather than establishing a reputation as the cool new drink everyone wanted to try, Pepsi Blue became a punchline about corporations that try too hard. Not helping at all was the fact that Pepsi Blue was colored with a dye called Blue No. 1, also known as Brilliant Blue. If that doesn't ring a bell, it's a dye which, at the time, was derived from coal tar and wound up being banned in a number of European countries due to health concerns. Brilliant Blue dye is made from different stuff today, but a number of U.S. states are, as of 2025, still looking at banning it. Long story short, Pepsi Blue was a mega flop. Teens liked it well enough, but adults hated its aggressively sweet taste. And since adults are usually the ones with the money to spend, things didn't go so hot. Pepsi Blue sold 17 million cases in 2002, even though it debuted halfway through the year. And then it sold just 5 million cases in all of 2003. Surprising no one, it was mostly discontinued in 2004. Pepsi Blue might seem like a goofy idea in retrospect, but the idea that consumers might be down for a fluorescently colored beverage didn't exactly come out of nowhere. As we said earlier, Pepsi already had a hit with Mountain Dew Code Red, and Gatorade had been popular for quite a while. In fact, vibrantly colored beverages had been something of a fad since Coke introduced Fruitopia through its Minute Maid brand back in 1994. The colorful fruit drinks became an overnight success, and before anyone knew what was going on, Fruitopia vending machines became a common sight in schools and on college campuses. It was even available at McDonald's soda fountains. The success of Fruitopia quickly led to copycat brands like Sobe, which popped up in 1996 and in 2000 was sold to, wait for it, Pepsi. Yes, the soft drink manufacturer, which seemed to get all of its ideas from its number one competitor, wanted in on the day-glow beverage fad pretty badly. The purchase of Sobe was the first step in that direction, and the introduction of Code Red was the second. Both of those moves went really well, so the introduction of Pepsi Blue must have seemed like a surefire winner. Unfortunately for Pepsi, their timing was a little less than ideal. With the dawn of the new millennium, energy drinks like Red Bull, Rockstar, and Monster stole the spotlight, and the Crayola-colored fruit drinks of the late 90s began to lose favor. Sales of Fruitopia started to lag towards the end of the 1990s, and by 2003, the brand was struggling so badly that Coke decided to phase it out in the US. Sales of Sobe also started flagging around the same time, and while Pepsi never discontinued it entirely, they did severely limit its availability, and pretty much stopped marketing it in any meaningful way. The success of Code Red clearly gave the company hope that bright, pretty colors were still the key to selling drinks to younger consumers. But that, apparently, was not the case. Pepsi Blue would never put the company in the black. If you lived in the US or Canada in 2004, you might have thought that Pepsi Blue was dead and buried. But the truth is, the soft drink was only actually discontinued in a handful of countries. Turns out, the unusual soda had developed a cult following in a bunch of other markets, where it still continues to exist to this day. Those markets are located in various parts of Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. It also remains especially popular in the Philippines, where it was rebranded as Pepsi Pinas.
Pepsi Pinas! Nas!
For those of you that have a sense of humor like an 11-year-old, yes, that does sound a lot like a certain part of the male anatomy. But in the Tagalog language, which is what they speak in the Philippines, it's just a slang word that's short for the name of the country. Pepsi also briefly brought Pepsi Blue back to supermarkets in the U.S. in 2021. According to the company, passionate Pepsi Blue fans have been clamoring for the return of their beloved berry cola for years, so Pepsi decided to oblige them. We're unaware of any future plans to do it again, but they're clearly susceptible to pressure from consumers.
Sa akin ang Pinas.
So if you're one of those passionate fans, make your voice heard. And who knows, sooner or later, Pepsi might help you chase away the blues with a little Pepsi Blue. So what do you think? And were you ever a fan of Pepsi Blue? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from Weird History.